My advice would be not just for the Spanish libertarian, but maybe for the libertarians in many other countries, is, well, first of all, to use the opportunity, because when I was elected, it was 7 years ago, and I was a 20-year-old student, and it was a big surprise for myself too, and for the whole team, that I was elected, because none of us had a political experience, none of us had money or access to the mainstream media, and all it took is, like, everything we had was a lot of enthusiasm and Twitter. And but we used this window of opportunity because it was 2012. There were massive opposition rallies in Russia. People were demanding fair elections and end of Putin's political monopoly, and so we used that as a chance to stand up and deliver our ideas, because there was a huge demand for new faces, for like the new generation of politicians. And although we were not like politicians in a proper way, but that was enough. And I think that now in Europe, the situation is in many ways similar, because, well, it's not similar, but it's similar in a way that there is an opportunity, because a lot of people are tired of mainstream parties. They are disappointed, they don't like this whole sort of establishment parties, and they are looking for new faces and new organizations, new movements. And unfortunately, in many places, this gap is being filled by anti-liberals of various sorts, whether left-wing or right-wing or just populists, but people who stand against everything we believe in. But I see no reason why this gap cannot be filled by the libertarians. So you already have a structure, so it takes a structure, it takes a group of dedicated people, and I think it also takes, so a lot of libertarians, well, it wouldn't be a surprise if I say that they sit in the ivory tower, and so here we see like the quotations from Mises and Rothbard, who are obviously our heroes, but you wouldn't, when you will be campaigning, you wouldn't talk about Rothbard to a person in the street. And my probably biggest lesson that I've learned as a counselor, as a local politician, was that like people are actually, they are ready to listen, and they are ready to like embrace your ideas if you are talking not about ideas in a vacuum, but if you are talking how these ideas can change their life. So you will see on the Putin's television that people are all big fans of Putin, and they support his military aggression, his foreign policy, isolationist policy, the saber rattling, and everything that we see in the news. But if you talk to the people, if you go like I did, going from door to door, ringing the bell, asking, like saying, I'm your local counselor, I'm like collecting the complaints and requests, what would you want me to, what kind of topic would you want me to raise at the local council, and you realize people don't care about America, about Western Europe and European Union, even about Ukraine. They care about what's going on in their backyard. They care much less about the stadiums that they've built for the World Cup than about the roads that they use every day to go to work. If they see that you care about it as well, then they will listen to your ideas, even if from the first sight they sound too radical. So you asking how to persuade people that who like share your ideas that politics, like taking part in politics and electoral process is important. And I don't know whether that's the right strategy, but maybe you can persuade them by making them afraid that if you don't do it, then someone who is much worse will do it. Because that's what we see all over Europe. Like there are parties who didn't exist just some time ago. So in France, Macron's party won the election. It's a very new one. As far as I know, like a lot of populist parties are very new. As far as I understand, Podemos is quite a new party, and unfortunately, they are now winning votes. And people, they are desperately looking for new people, for new faces in politics. And I really believe that most of them don't want populists, they don't want isolationists, they don't want to see anti-liberals, they don't want to see far right or far left people, but sometimes they just turn to these parties, they support them because they see no one else. So even providing a healthy, normal alternative will be a very big step towards a freer society, I guess. Well, every time I hear, I hope it doesn't sound arrogant, but every time I hear people from Western democracies complaining about the situation with the media, I don't take it really seriously, because even when all the media are biased, even when all the media have some relations to people with questionable sources of money, it's far better than the situation in Russia, where the media should be either owned by the government or owned by an oligarch who is loyal to the government, or will face all sorts of problems, legal problems, and sometimes even like physical assaults that you can think of. And so the first thing that Putin did one of the first things he did when he came to power in 2001 was to shut down the independent TV channel. And since then, we don't have the mainstream TV channels, so we have some online channels that are independent, but everything that's broadcasted on TV is controlled by the government. And a lot of so I studied journalism, and I worked as a journalist since I was 14. And I graduated from the Department of Journalism in Moscow, and it was 2013. And back then, there were a lot of places for me to work as an independent journalist. Not like very much, but there were a lot of online resources. There were a lot of newspapers. They were not very mainstream, so not as popular as like the tabloids, but still. And I've seen with my own eyes how like this deteriorated very fastly. So in 2014 was probably a point of no return, because when the war with Ukraine started, and when there's a war, then everyone who disagrees with the government is a national traitor and a spy. So so I myself moved to Kiev, and there was a number of Russians who moved to Kiev to do a Russian-speaking media from Kiev. There was another very famous and like successful online news media who the whole team moved to Latvia. There are people so there are Russian-speaking medias sitting in all other countries now, in Czech Republic, in Riga, in Kiev, and elsewhere in Europe and in America, because similarly to like how it was when the Bolsheviks came to power, and a lot of intellectuals moved out of Russia, and they created their own enclaves in Paris, in Prague, in New York. It's a little bit similar, but even now, even under such a dire situation, well, we have internet now. They didn't have it. The Russian immigrants so they had to. So the Radio Free Europe, the Radio Liberty, and the BBC, they were broadcasting for the Soviet and Eastern European citizens. It was illegal to listen to it, and it was a struggle to get access to that information. But today, even in China, where they have this firewall, they cannot block people from the information. And in Russia, we're moving towards this direction. So they blocked a very popular messenger Telegram recently, and in a few days, like over 10,000 people went out to the street to protest against internet censorship. And I'm proud to say that was organized by the Libertarian Party of Russia. So I see those, like, especially the young people, they just don't want to give it up because, okay, they don't have political freedom, but they used to have this free space online, and they don't want to give it up. So it's much easier today, even if the mainstream media are controlled to different degrees in Spain and in Russia. But you have social networks. We all know campaigns that were won thanks to social networks, and that's the experience we should use.